All right. So, yeah, like I said, we're going to jump right in, and you're not going to be able to read the text because, there's all of that. But I've highlighted a couple areas where we've kind of noted there's some pretty nasty problems. So, as a core concept, there is a lot of intersecting, call it height drop measurements and conflicting, call it distances from floor. So there's a lot of, where it doesn't really make sense to have different measurements. So that's a frustration. The way that guard loads are actually being dealt with in the language, where it forces you to get an engineer in order to accommodate for guard, that's also, in our view, not appropriate. And last, we have this issue with specialized knowledge. Every time that concept now comes up, I just get like a little cranky about the whole subject. So yeah, structural guards are a thing, opening restriction, fall hazard, and just like the implementation itself is insane. So these are kind of the core issues that we see with 9881 currently. Like it's creating issues across all four of those segments. So here's a little bit of a Venn diagram I put together where it kind of shows you what the code was trying to do. It was trying to layer, structural glazing, and egress, and fall protection, but it also, and for our benefit here in the fenestration world, also layered railings and fenestration on top of each other. So both of those were kind of being treated in the same aspect. So I think this is like such a beautiful problem in our industry because it kind of illustrates something that's a deeper issue, which is all the metrics we're trying to hit all at the same time. Like this code item essentially did it in like one segment. That's almost masterful in how bad it is. So, the ambiguity here, and this is, yeah, I actually just had a conversation with a reporter from the CBC. They reached out to Fenestration Canada, and they had a couple kids that had fallen out of windows, and so they reached out to us saying, what's the deal? Like, why is this a problem? And Fenestration Canada has been at this topic before I was in the industry by another 10 years. Like, Terry, we were talking about who was it? Was it Jim? Jim Parker. Yeah, he was working with a handful of people and created a bit of an organization to kind of start looking at this deeply. And it's not that we ever let go of it. It's just we got stuck in the weeds. It was almost impossible to unpack this, but one of the problems we've essentially created is that in that contrast between egress and fall protection, egress got prioritized and fall protection has essentially led us to children falling out of windows. That's a non-starter. Our industry can't accept that. So yeah, let's start there. Next is the uneven playing field. One of the biggest comments that Terry and I get from industry is the genuine frustration on how guard is being interpreted. Where is guard to be interpreted? Is it a dwelling unit in the entire top floor? Is it just in the stairwell? What is the height appropriate? Like in part 9, it's hilarious. It's like 18, 24 inches, 36 inches, 42 inches. Like anywhere in that gambit, there's going to be some answer. And as you get into it, like the real interpretation is 36 inches from the sill.
Yeah, to the opening.
To the opening. Yeah, that's its own frustration. Anyway, can't get into that. And then again, inspectors are confused. All of these sizes don't like correspond to something that's logical. And then I'm going to end with kind of my beef with the whole uneven side of it, the guard load language side of it is part 9 in all considerations should have been a paint by numbers system. The idea that we have to hire an engineer in order to calculate the load on glass for a single family home is not the intent. And I've got a deeper beef about this, and actually the industry, on the code side, we've talked to quite a few of the code authorities about this, and they agree. Like they're not comfortable with the idea that the engineering world has dipped their fingers into the part 9 world and started like ripping things apart and making it something that they have to solve. So, I know when I brought this up to the BSSB, so on the BC side, they were really supportive, and they said, you're going to run into some gates here, but we're here to support you. Like, and this is something that they're the worst offenders, in my opinion, as far as interpretation. Like, BC has gotten way out of hand on this, like to the point that really you need an engineer on a Part 9 building to look at any window that is above 36 inches, or sorry, below 36 inches. Yeah. So that doesn't work. We have to push back against that. And then WOCD, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but yeah, we're at this point where we have 6 different province interpretations, and they're fairly harmonized except for BC. I mean, but they're not the same. They don't read the same. That's a like, and we've got a CCR in for that one specifically, but 9881 is one of our core areas to solve that problem. So there's 2 paths forward. First is exactly what Terry and I have been doing, which is education and advisement. And Dave, you've again been instrumental in like, let's lean into this and figure out, like, when the Alberta stuff came through for guard glazing, it was a mess. Like, you guys were about to go into the same position that BC was in, which meant that, what was the percentage? Do you remember?
It was 20 to 30% of the lights in any given Part 9 home would have required a 4 mil tempered inboard. And so let me back up and give you a little background. So this whole interpretation regarding windows in walls that need to meet guard loads, needing to meet guard loads themselves if the glazing is below the guard height. This started out as a 2012 building code interpretation by the Building Code Interpretation Committee in BC, which is EGBC, Architectural Institute of BC, Building Owners Association of BOA BC, Building Officials Association of BC. That said, basically, when the wall is required to be a guard, which is whenever there's more than a 600 millimeter difference between the floor on one side and the floor ground on the other side, any glazing in that wall that is below the guard height needs to be capable of meeting guard loads. And so now, when this first came out, I was heavily opposed to it. I said, this is outrageous. This is a ridiculous interpretation. Treating a window like a conventional balcony guard, right? And it's going to impose costs that are not justified by any kind of history of people actually falling out of double glazed windows, like, to their death.
Yeah, except for once, which the guy apparently ran full speed at the window to prove how strong the glass was.
And then, high-rise, yeah.
That was yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah.
And just to add to that, the glass didn't break. The glass popped out of the frame.
Yeah.
It was the glazing bead.
Yeah.
Shouldn't laugh about people falling out of windows.
I initially was very opposed to this. I thought it was tremendous overreach, but it was adopted by all engineers signing and sealing window and door shop drawings and letters of assurance for professional design and review in BC and non-Part 9 buildings. Because I can tell you, these engineers do not give a damn about imposing increased costs on the customer if it's going to remove some liability that they may face down the road. So they're very, very risk adverse.
Yeah.
And so they make these, and I didn't agree with the decision. Then there was an official designing guards for buildings document that was published by EGBC and endorsed by AIBC and the structural engineers of BC, saying, this is what we are telling our members, you need to enforce this. And then there became no wiggle room. But I still argued it with engineers when it was outside of BC. And then NBC 2015 structural commentaries, in commentary I wind loads, it said the same thing. Now, the thing about structural commentaries, it is not a main body reference in the code language. It is in the appendix notes, and therefore it's not normative, not enforceable by safety codes officers. It's kind of advice for professionals, and that's an engineer-facing document. So now, all over the rest of Canada, in particular in Alberta, they started enforcing this.
Yeah.
Well, anytime there was a requirement for sign and sealed window and door shop drawings.
Well, and
so
same in Ontario. I
Yeah.
remember I was dealing with it quite a bit in Ontario and in Quebec. Like both of those provinces, I was starting to see it was, to steal a word from Robert,
Yeah.
the fires in the barn.
Yeah. So at that point, I felt like I'd kind of lost the fight, right? The engineers are saying, Dave, you're full of shit. It's now in structural commentaries, right? What are you going to say now? I got nothing to say except inevitably out came another building code interpretation in BC regarding the it came out. When did it come out? In 2024, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And it said
November 2024.
they expanded it to Part 9 buildings. Okay, so prior to this, only windows and stairwells and landings needed to meet guard loads for the obvious reason that you can trip down the stairs or trip up the stairs or whatever, and have a high impact, more higher probability of impact with the window. But the language, the way it is written, implies that, because it says any surface to which access is provided, it needs to be protected whenever there's a different, unless it's a loading dock or some other kind of exceptions, right? But if you talk to an architect, they will push back. They say, where does it say this in code exactly? Well, you kind of got to read between the lines, and now there's structural commentaries and all of that stuff. And so I want to back up a little bit. So Fenestration Canada has traditionally strayed away from advocacy, saying, we are in favor of this code change, or we are against this code change. Our position has generally been, we don't have a dog in this fight. We just want clarity for our members, so everybody's operating according to the same rules out of the same rule book, and so that we have clarity in the industry. But it was a real sobering event when Alberta published this stand data, and unlike the building code interpretation, where the fine print says at the bottom, this is just our opinion and it's not legally binding. It's up to the AHJs whether to enforce it. In Alberta, stand data has full force of law, and the AHJs cannot fail to enforce this. It's as legal.
It's law.
It's as code. It's as legal as code.
Yeah, it's enforced by their Building Safety Act.
Yeah. So it launched in Alberta, and they said they published it on January 15, and they said it's effective January 1. How do you like those apples? And not only that, but it's effective for buildings that have been on order for months, right? Buildings where you've already quoted it, and the builder has budgeted a certain budget, and now you're going to add $2,500 to $5,000 depending on how many square feet this Part 9 building is. And there was immediate rebellion on the part of CHBA Alberta, which is the Edmonton chapter of Build Alberta. And Build Alberta was what was used to be CHBA Alberta. And there was immediate and very kind of almost violent pushback. And we also uncovered that there was no way to meet this demand for tempered glass in Western Canada. We simply don't have the tempering facilities. And so its status is now on hold. But that's what kind of shook me a little bit regarding that we shouldn't be advocates. Maybe we should sometimes be advocates, because who's standing up for the building owners? Like, we have an affordability crisis in this country, and all of the new building code changes are tending to increase that problem. And and so maybe we should start to be more advocates, for the building owners and all of that kind of stuff, when it is a problem that it's not solving a real world problem. So that's just my personal opinion. That's not Fenestration Canada's position, although if I had my druthers,
yeah, we've got another slide right at the end that I'm going to open up kind of a broader conversation about this one, because there's some stuff that's going on underneath the surface of our code world that taking a position as an association requires your voice. I won't. Like, I can give you my opinion, but this is one of those where it's too broad and it has too much opportunity for disruption, in my opinion. And so there is a level of careful consultation that we should be doing. So I'm going to leave that slide to the end.
Yeah.
So what we did in response, and this isn't the level of advocacy that we kind of talked about with glass or tariffs. This is a we've introduced a code change. So this code change is what we'll call 9888. So 9881 is the problem child of this particular issue in part 9, and 988 separates us from the guardrails. Point is that, you know, like the logic behind what you need to do in order to protect yourself when you're talking about something that people are going to lean against versus what we are talking about when we're talking about a window or a door should be different. Like those should not be the same logic sets. So we're going to start by just separating ourselves from that conversation. So the idea is that it is going to provide us a prescriptive glazing pathway. So it essentially points to a tempering table in 9627, 926 something. But it points to this tempering table as, you know, what you need to meet in order to hit the safety glazing requirement, or you can, you know, engineer your product as a guard. So it gives both options, but it doesn't force you into guard every time you hit, you know, the guard requirement, which is important and imperfect. Like, you know, ideally, in my view, especially for part 9, if you've got a 4mm piece of glass and it's tempered, why are we even talking about it? Like, you know, maybe we need 6mm in really rare, large cases, but that's not common. Like, like we're definitely in the like last percent of the use cases in that point.
Yeah, and so the other thing is that certain municipalities are a lot more hot and heavy for enforcement. And, you know, Rocky View, which is the surrounding community of Calgary, very, very hard ass on this. And they want a letter for every window, a letter from an engineer for every window when it's in stairwells and landings. So what happened was somebody in the balcony railings industry said that the minimum for an infill panel in a balcony guard to meet guard loads was a 5mm tempered, right? And so that got around the building officials. And so they started to say, if your window doesn't have 5mm tempered, I'm going to ask for a letter from an engineer.
Yeah.
And so I do 2 or 3 of these letters every week. And can you imagine if they expand that to every window in the dang house? I'll be doing nothing but writing letters. You know, I'll have to land my stamp to somebody, and, you know.
$800 to $1,500 every time you do it.
Yeah,
like if
so
I have to hire an engineer, that's where I'm going.
if your company does not have any professional engineers on staff, and a lot of window and door companies don't, my company has several engineers on staff. You know, you can do this free of charge. But if you need to do a third party,
Hey, there is a video that we did on guard, not last year, but the year before, from David Vidokes, and he walked through the software necessary to do this. So that is out there. Technically, you could do it yourself, but you still have to have an engineer.
yeah,
You still need a stamping engineer in order to qualify that it's a meeting guard.
it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And so that software is actually, there's a version of it called MEPLA ISO that's actually available free of charge. And you will generally find that 4mm tempered inboard is required to meet guard loads. And if it was a high wind, you have to do a combination of wind and guard loading.
Yeah.
Examine all the loading cases. But you know, so you might need 5mm if you had a high wind load in combination with guard loads, but we just default to 4mm tempered inboard when engineering is required, and we haven't had any come back where they came with red ink saying you got to bump it up to 5mm. So it's a fairly good bet 4mm tempered will do it. But we went from building officials, they look for, is it etched that it's tempered? We're good to go. Is it etched that it's tempered, and does it have a freaking letter from an engineer?
Yeah.
Under the seal? Yeah. So that's your worst case scenario right there.
So the way we handled it in 988 is that we point to the safety glazing table, and that gives you some pathways in order to find what type of glass you're going to use. So instead of having to hire an engineer to go through that process and use the software and then stamp it, this gives that prescriptive path. And if that's not enough, you still have guard as an option. So if you got an engineer on path and you want, like, on staff, and that's going to work for you, you want to pay for it, that's still an option. And that's in my view, that's kind of where part 9 should be anyway. If you want an engineering path, take it. But if not, it's a paint by number system. You should be able, like any builder, should be able to read the code and say, I'm going to do this for my building.
Yep.
And I don't need to get an engineer involved for that. Anyway, that's
Yeah, and that's our philosophy in Alberta. Like the original first standatas that I became aware of, probably the most prominent one was the tall wall standata, right? Because people, if you had a front entrance system, you know, that was with a loft in the next level, and you had a very tall wall there, you had to have your wall engineered every time
mhm.
until the government of Alberta did a standata that says this is the prescriptive way to do a tall wall,
Yeah,
right? But no other provinces have the ability to do things like that.
not yet. No. Like, I mean, Quebec's not bad at it. Like, they kind of have their own interpretation that they will do, and it's pretty binding. But yeah, outside of the BOABC, which isn't as strong as the Standata, it's not a legalistic engine. It's a official interpretation, and it's taken seriously. Like culturally, I
Well,
think
yeah,
they take it
because
very seriously.
because the interpreter is EGBC that binds the engineers, and Architectural Institute of BC that binds the architects, because it's official publication that's endorsed by their professional association. But it doesn't bind any safety codes officers.
Yeah.
So if there is no architect, there is no engineer, and we run into this quite a bit. We get complaints from customers who say your quote is way higher than your competitors because they're quoting annealed glass.
Yeah.
And they don't have an architect, and the architect doesn't have a consultant engineer. Like, well, shoot, this is a non-Part 9 building. You must have an architect.
Yeah.
And that architect must have an engineer. Like, they find a workaround, and then again, it doesn't serve the public very well.
Yeah.
It's not a level playing field again.
So on the height clarity problem, I think there was like 8 different heights they were referring to, and we halved that in the CCR. So it's, you know, it's a marked improvement as far as the confusion between where you fall and why, like, and where you're measuring from. Like that was a big thing, was getting the language kind of massaged in so that we were clear on, you know, at what portion of the window are you gauging your perspective from. And then last was fall prevention hardware. So we did add an item specifically to WOCD in 9888 so that we could address kind of this bridge between egress and fall protection and provide like an F2090 solution there. We've talked enough about it. It needs to be there.
Yeah, and then the other thing, engineers quite frequently, there'll be an openable unit below the 900 millimeter guard height, and the engineer will sign off on it if it has a SAS restrictor. But it's a logical non sequitur. The guard load is 1 kilonewton, placed to give the greatest effect. So let's say you had a casement, it's in the open position, and the SAS restrictor's down here. I'd push on the opposite corner with 1 kilonewton. That glass, even tempered glass, may break. The sash may bend. You know, so nobody has actually answered that question, because ASTM F2090 and the other ASTM standard for non-emergency escape, it's 65 pounds on the device itself.
Mhm.
This is a reflective small child fall prevention, not adult fall prevention. And so it just so if somebody started asking me to sign windows, so if it's in a stairwell or landing, it says it needs to be non-openable and designed to withstand the specified lateral loads for balcony guards. But if they expand this to elsewhere in the building, I'm going to say the operator's in the bottom and needs to go to the top. I cannot provide you with a letter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well,
You
you know,
just don't know unless you test it.
so I've kind of got this slide that helps us separate safety glazing from guard, because I think we oftentimes find ourselves kind of in this weird tangled mess where we're talking about the two, but they're different. Like, so safety glazing is really the resistance to breakage. Like it is, you know, what is that breaking point for the glass, versus guard glazing is withstanding the loads on the glass. You know, like there is a marked difference between those two actions. And so again, that was the big thing for me, is we needed to separate why we were doing this. Like we're trying to resist breakage.
So they are so confused out there right now. So again, Rocky View, they're really harsh on code enforcement. So one of our builders had hundreds and hundreds of homes out there where they got a soaker tub, and it's a foot away from the wall, and there's a window in the wall, right? And the building inspector considers it a bath or shower enclosure.
Yeah.
Because if you could slip in the tub and hit the window, or if you could step a foot out of the tub and slip and hit the window, now it needs to be safety glass. So I got the email earlier this week, and sales was saying, I thought that this stand data was on hold. What the hell is going on here? It's like, no, this is safety glass.
Yeah,
And-
that's
and-
totally different. And slip zone is a different conversation altogether.
You know, so they
Yeah.
are very mixed up between, like I'll give you an example. In dwelling units, it's 900 millimeters. Outside of dwelling units, it's 1,070 millimeters, and in public areas above the second floor, it's 1,000 millimeters.
Correct.
You know, why can't they just come up with one number,
Yeah,
right?
why
And
does it
then
matter?
the category for the and the criteria for guard loads is a 600 millimeter difference between the floor and this side of the foreground on that side. For window sash restrictor devices, it's the opening that is less than 900 millimeters above the floor, and the opening is more than 1,800. So I mean,
That 600 comes specifically from decks and railings
Yeah.
on decks. Where you get a deck that is higher than 600 millimeters from the ground, that railing needs to be guarded. That's where that number came from. So
Correct.
It's never meant to be.
For windows. No.
Yeah.
That's just where it ended up.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a lot of the arguments we're going to have to get into. So I didn't really explain it here, but like in our conversation so far, but the way that this process works now that we've put in 9888 into the National Building Code is that it goes to the board at the CBHCC, and we've gotten confirmation from the board it's there. And they will now triage it to a National Model Committee, the NMCC. Just for the record, I hate acronyms. I try my best to explain each one of them because they are everywhere. So I'm going to continue to give the full bit. So the National Model Committee then determines whether or not the CCR is appropriate for that model cycle's priorities. And then once they have said yes, it's appropriate for the priorities, then they put it to a PCF, or a proposed code form. That proposed code form then has to go through evaluation, which is like impact studies, and gets a lot of language, push and pull. Like it's where the work of deciding whether or not it belongs in our minimum code actually goes. So we're at triage stage right now. And I'll be honest, and Dave, you can rip this apart all you want. It's not perfect. Like this CCR doesn't solve all our problems. Like the dwelling unit, like essentially the goal for this was we wanted to untangle it, we wanted to make it prescriptive, and we wanted to simplify it. But I didn't change any of the safety expectations around it because we know, working in the National Building Code side, if it hit them with like substantial considerations on safety, it died before it even got there. And so we've pushed on a couple areas strategically to see if we can at least get it into the PCF stage. And then we can start arguing for what's right about this.
Safety is number one. The people who are enforcing this are called SCOs, safety codes officers. Safety is absolutely at the top.
Yeah.
Affordability doesn't even factor in. So
Yeah, and another one for me is the 4-inch restrictor side of that conversation is also not well solved here. Like that's going to be a bit of a messy thing to untangle, but yeah, that's in my opinion, that was kind of what we were up against. We were up against like call it 7 to 8 different conflicts within these overlapping priorities that we've managed to unravel like 3. That's a first step. But the hope is over the course of this next cycle, we'll do more work on it. Here's the QR code for the full CCR. So it's got like our impact analysis on it, the language, it's the full breakdown that we sent to the CBHCC. So anybody that's interested in it, you can either scan it or just message me, and I'll be glad to give it to you and unpack anything that you're curious about. So this is the point of the conversation that I was going to give us, 10 minutes to vent about what we're looking at next. And Terry, I hope you're okay with this because it's going to be one of those like, yeah, awesome. All right. So The Canadian Home Builders Association recently released a white paper called Pause All Things Codes. And they sent a letter to Minister Carney essentially saying the 2025 code needs to be paused indefinitely, that it did not consider affordability features within the next code cycle. They're right. And I read through this entire article. Now, first off, I hate their title. I think they have misconstrued what they say in the white paper. They don't actually mean pause everything. They mean we need to have a conversation about what was wrong here. And there's things that we need to go back and readdress about the 2025 code. But all their grievances, I remember sitting on code calls with some of their head guys, and they were dead on. There were like conversations about operational carbon, for instance. It's really hard to explain how different, call it, cost considerations are from policy considerations. And that group deals with policy considerations. And so this idea that we, have gotten into an affordability crisis, of course we have. Like, if we're building codes in a world that doesn't actually have to think about it, then yeah, that was the outcome. Like, we can get to safety to the nth degree, but the holistic view is really hard to maintain. So yeah, I think, personally, when they first brought this out and Terry and I were talking about it, and I talked to a few other people about it, the truth is I think CHBA was wrong about pausing the 2025 code. That what I would have preferred to see is that we have a very serious conversation with NRC and NRCan and the CHBCC about incorporating affordability as a key component in the 2030 cycle. Because my experience with tariffs and watching what it has done to your guys' market, our market, it destabilized us. Do we need more destabilization anywhere? My opinion is no. Even if it's imperfect, I actually don't want to rock the boat much. But that being said, bloody provinces. We have a harmonization accord in which they're supposed to be following the 2025 within 18 months. And collectively, they're kind of going, we'll just implement when we feel like it.
And what we feel like.
Yeah, and what we feel like. So, you know what? Bugger it then. Like, if that's the truth, then the provinces are going to deharmonize, and then, maybe the 2025 pause makes sense. This is, it's really frustrating to me. Like, what I'm seeing is we were heading down this path where we were trying to make it more dependable for the market. I hate hearing how, like, oh, there's so many versions of the code, and you're kind of right, but it's every 5-year cycle. The problem is that it's being done out of alignment of each other. Like, the codes are being implemented at different stages all across the board, so it feels like madness. So
Yeah, then Alberta declared when the new code came in, that they wouldn't be enforcing anything above tier 1 in terms of the energy standards for the foreseeable future, right? So we're deharmonized 100% in Alberta, right?
yeah,
Saskatchewan did something similar.
yeah, they did.
They stepped right off the energies.
Yeah,
So did
yeah.
PEI.
And
They didn't even implement
honestly, I
something
think
until
something's going to happen. I think it's not practical. I think the big picture is that net zero is a good idea, but it's not practicable. And sooner or later, you're going to hit that hard stop that says, this was a good idea, but how the heck are you going to do it? Is it with unicorns farting rainbows? Like, so I came across, yeah, no, well, so I came across an interesting concept last year. It was from an economist, a prominent economist, and he talked about energy return on energy invested, EROEI. And he pointed out that the Industrial Revolution started when we started digging up coal, and coal was very high energy return on energy invested. The initial deposits were lying on the surface. Now, since then, we've used those initial coal deposits. Now we have to drill for our hydrocarbons, and then you have to drill and you have to frack for your hydrocarbons. So the energy return, the ratio of energy return on energy invested is going down and down and down. And renewables have really low energy return on energy invested, and wind turbines maybe have a negative ratio if you don't kid yourself,
Yeah.
and you look into the fact that they're cutting down balsa forests to be the core of these turbines, and they're making them out of fiberglass.
I
and
know
they're
I
degrading.
asked for this,
Yeah.
but I want to bring this back to kind of our practical input on the fenestration side,
Yeah.
because I think this is one of those areas where if I'm looking through an advocacy lens, we could be speaking into this. But I'll be
I'm not
honest,
saying we'd be really controversial and advocate the way I'm kind of saying right here, speaking frankly, but my perspective is that it's the overlying issue that is driving the politics, that is driving us to have to react.
yeah,
And I see it as being not practicable, and at some point it probably will go away. So I'm only making a prediction.
well,
I'm not advocating for a position.
so
Right now, it is a political reality. It still remains a political reality, but for how much longer will it be a political reality?
So we've given our 2 cents at this point, and what I want to do is make sure I give it back to the audience to give your 2 cents on, Terry and I participate on the National Building Code weekly. Like it is a constant thing, and it is a mess. It's really hard to participate in. It is a very slow process. I don't think we should change that we need our voice there. But at the same point, there is a level of like background. Yeah, I remember I had a conversation with our lobbyists and with NRC, and they gave us essentially a pathway that we could go talk to the deputy minister that is, managing the code cycle. So it essentially like takes a step beyond the code world, and we actually deal with it from the politics side. We could. It makes me uncomfortable. The fact that you can do that tells me it's probably not healthy. But we have the opportunity again as an association to use our voice in this. I think the going after change code requests is the right path. Like that is within the structure, that's within the framework. That is us cultivating even our imagination for what our world could look like. But I think on the code side, it almost takes us, we probably need to take a step back and ask the big question of, as an association, what do we want to see from our side on the code world? If we're going to participate in it, we could actually speak into it. It's like, I was telling Terry the other day, I think the absolute best thing that could happen to the code tomorrow is if we said no more additions. This code cycle, we're not adding anything else. We're just going to make it in layman terms. We're going to take the whole thing and make it actually understandable so that an inspector, when they read the code, can use the code. When manufacturers read the code, they can use the code. If I were to take one suggestion, it essentially would be that. And you know how much better our market would be for that? Man, we'd be able to actually play on a level playing field again. Simple and ineffective because the standards also get involved and it's complicated.
So my 5 years as a FinCan staffer, it has been constant code change. It never stops. As soon as you think we've got the code, all of a sudden you're into this next cycle and it just never ends. And it's really challenging to try and stay on top of where things are at and where it's going. So yeah, some stability of it. Maybe it needs to be a 10-year cycle with some amendments every 5 years or something. I don't know, but it's a challenge.
Prioritization for minor and major items and philosophical changes. And it's almost like, but those are the kind of things I've been asked to write a letter to this deputy minister, and I've essentially not done it because I don't have your voice in this yet, because frankly, it's a complicated enough topic that I would need a framework like this and a couple rounds of these type of discussions for, I think, you guys to see this enough to give impact, because it's...
Questions, if anybody's got them? Comments, questions? After divorce, that's me.
If you say one number, I'm going to pop.
That's the plan. No. It sounds to me like the question is whether to join the CHBA's effort in asking for some sort of
That's one question.
delay. And my understanding from reading it was like it isn't so much about pausing code development. It's about pausing implementation. It's like pausing actually putting the changes in. So you can sit there and work in the committees in the background until you go blue in the face if you want. They're just saying leave it to 2030 to actually put anything in. At which point, so my caution in joining that effort, okay, is that a key request of the CHBA is this affordability metric. Okay. Look what happened to us. Terry just said it. Look what happened to us when the building code stopped being about structural and also became about energy.
Yeah, totally.
Where is all of this coming from? Right? How many changes would you have to make for structural? Well, I guess the guard thing was what, but you know, the WOCD, you know, yeah. So there's a few little things there, but I mean, it wouldn't be anything like what's gone on with the energy, right? Now you're going to stick affordability in there? Are you kidding me? You're taking the building code
and alterations to
completely out of its
existing
purpose.
buildings.
And then you're going to put embodied carbon on top on the energy side.
And alterations to existing buildings.
No, it's an expansion of the scope of the building code beyond anything we should want at all. And so with all love to the CHBA, I honestly, they're trying to hijack the process so that
I agree.
so that they can save costs.
And I think it's too late.
It's too late. They should have, if they were going to do this, they should have did it, a year and a half
Right.
ago.
Right.
Right. So I think my opinion, again, I think, you just stay a little bit arm's length from that conversation.
Yep.
Let them fail, because they will, to do that. And because they're really being performative, they're showing their members, hey, we're, so
Anything actually comes of it?
well, it's so unimplementable, if that's a word. You can't even you can't measure affordability trying to buy something, much less put it in a code. What do you like? How are you going to do that? So my view on it is that is that we would stay arm's length from that, and yeah. So that's my 2 cents.
And that's encouraging. That's been essentially the approach that we've been at is, we watch and listen.
And they talk about this affordability and the code changes that are, making affordability a bigger challenge, which I'm not going to argue because it does. But nobody's complaining about, marble countertops or painting your windows black or fancy hardware or really nice lighting that is really expensive.
Do we make any
Nobody's
extra money
complaining.
selling? Do we make any extra money selling triple glaze and really nice high performance windows?
sure.
Okay.
But I'm saying that there's this affordability, argument, but nobody has a problem with paying for, granite countertops. So, I really struggle with this whole, I agree there's an affordability issue and prices are out of control, but people will buy what they want to buy if they can do it.
People in their 50s and 60s have no problem paying for that stuff.
No, there's truth in that, but I know plenty of 35-year-olds that are buying $1 million homes
Wow.
in Vancouver.
And what industry are they in? Is it too late to change?
I'm not saying that there's not a problem, and I appreciate
Here goes Dave.
I appreciate the younger generation and the challenges for them. I'm not dismissing that. I'm just saying that affordability could be managed better by taking away these fancy components that people want in their homes, be it older people or younger people, doesn't matter. Granite countertops in just about every single house. Why? Put in Arborate, man, with freaking plywood underneath it. But you don't see that.
Out of 10 factors hitting
Yeah,
affordability,
exactly. Yeah.
we're talking about one that is,
Yeah.
along here.
but it's a
how about
nice-
supply.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Anything else? Anyone else want to speak to what you guys see and what you would like to see? I like other people's imagination. My only goes so far.
are we good? Well, I want to thank the holdouts that stuck around right to the bitter end. We really appreciate that. I do want to say thanks, of course, to our sponsors: Sherwin-Williams, Newcoat, Radisson, Paradigm, Pref ERP, Novatech, Layton, JSA, Screenco, ODL, Assa Abloy, Robivare, Sodac, Ultrafob, Federated, Renault, Tremco, Vecca, Elton, Plastro, Trimlite, Protomac, Richelieu, Servitec, Inline, Eugenie, INT Machinery, FSDC, Roto, Furco, Batero, LTC, AdFast, Fenestration Review. 34 supporters. So that's fantastic. Unbelievable. Appreciate that. There goes my mic again. I do want to comment because it's mostly members in the room. Thing. You have a page on the Fenestration Canada website. It's your member page. Go in that page and fix it up. Add contact emails to it so that your employees are getting our information. We'd love to have like your accountant people, your HR people, your install people, so that we can reach more of our membership. Many members have one contact in there. So we need more contacts in there so we can get to everybody in your company, or as many in your company as we can. So please do that. There's also opportunity there to put in all kinds of information about your company, what you do, where you operate, et cetera, et cetera. It's free advertising. And I know that consumers look at our page. So put your info in there, and it's free in that it's part of your membership. I want to thank